Okay, so we came to this very difficult part of the Maamar where he's answering the question, the Frierdiker Rebbe's question. Karosi. Karosi is like it's a casual call. How is it from an Hameitzar? It's Karosi and not Shavosi, it's Akti. So after the Rebbe's whole beer, how could it be Ben Hameitzar after the whole Avodah of Elul, Rosh Hashanah night, for Erev Rosh Hashanah night, Rosh Hashanah morning, and the comes at Kiyas, a Yid's in a matzav of a Mitzar. So the answer in a word is that in the presence of the Eibush himself, every level is an absolute Mitzar. And therefore, it's not a relative Mitzar. He's not in the relative Mitzar, meaning to say that he aspires for a higher level, a closer level to Hashem, a higher level. That's a relative Mitzar. But this is an absolute Mitzar, knowing that at this moment, this moment of Tkiyah Shofar, in the words of the Maamar, that Atzmos Mahus is revealed. So it's an absolute Mitzar, not a relative one. And therefore he said, it can't be a tzayka, sort of call, a cry. For the call or a cry is an expression that describes the longing, the pining for this higher level. It describes where he is and where he wants to be. But since this is not a question of levels, but a question of mamish facing to face the Eibishter himself, then there is no tzayka, there's no expression that can give rise to, that can define this connection. Simply a kriya pshuta, a simple call. Quite simply, friends, in the presence of the Melech Mamish, there's no drama. When addressing the Melech Mamish, it's in the most subdued and simple. The Maimon doesn't say this here, but perhaps it could be connected to the irony that at the end of the day, to madregas and levels, we may not have any shaykhs or little shaykhs. But the Eibishter himself, so it's a local call. It's almost, there's no gaps to bridge, calls out in distress. It's right here. The Eibishter is right here and close to everyone equally. There is no further or closer from the Eibishter himself. So it's a kriya, it's a simple gesture. A muted gesture. The Maimon doesn't say this. the following thing either, but the Maimorim talks about the sound of the shofar. The pnimis is a kol pnimo lo yishtama. It's an inner voice that is not heard. And that's why there's no shofar on Shabbos, because the etzem, the pnimius of shofar, there is. And that's the neshama. So let's continue in Oisches. The Rebbe adds explanation here. V'zeh menam meitzer korosiko anoni b'merchav ko. It seems there's two kinds of call. There's a kriya and there's a kriya pshuta. This is here we're speaking kriya pshuta, the simplest, unadorned call. Sheba mitachlis hameitzer, that comes from the absolute constraint, meaning bittul, b'efen shel heder hamitzias, that the yid standing here transcends all sense of being in independence completely. Heder hamitzias. So nimshach, so calling on the Eibishter from this deep place of bittul, which he said is not even in an akudah. The moon is completely hidden. So nimshach gam b'lamayla mibchina shelamayim begeder shel metzius. So how do we touch the Eibishter so deeply? Higher than any being, meaning to say, higher than any descriptive quality that can be described as Ein Sof, madregas, and levels. Rambam alludes to this in Yal Ladash, who Einay Motzei. Einay Motzei means that Hashem is not an entity like all other entities, or just on some vastly grander scale. That's true of all the revelations of Hashem. But he touches the very essence higher than any descriptive being of God. And that is, answer me with the broadness. It's the essential broadness, meaning to say the true unlimitlessness of the Eibishter. The merchav ha'atzmi. Kebemes merchav ha'atzmi is a term that needs to be understood because etzem, by definition, essence doesn't have broadness. Etzem biltim is gala. That's the point. Therefore, this broadness here, the merchav ha'atzmi, is essentially true, essential. Again, the translation is broadness, but that implies space and all kinds of limitations and connotations which we don't mean, but we mean the essence. And now it gives explanation. This kriya pshuta, the simple call. I mean, it's good news, friends, isn't this? Because if you had to stand there before Tkiya Shofar with no, what have you accomplished? No. With the ''tshk, with the whole avodah behind you and achievements. He's saying that would not connect you. So this is paradoxically good news because this leaves room for everyone. But the emes is to derhead it in some way. It's only after the whole avodah of Elul and slichas and so on. That's all to bring us to some kind of bittul, heder hamitzias. So let's see inside the maamar.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Can we add that the simple call, the other calls, the sobbing and the weeping, are all represented by the tekiah, shvarim, and trua also. So maybe that's why the Hameitzar karasi is the simple.
You're saying it's the tekiah.
The tekiah, shvarim, trua represent the different other types of calls that we possibly could have in the shofar itself. So our calling itself is a simple call, but the other calls maybe are represented through the blasts, the different type of blasts.
I hear what you're saying, but usually what the explanation is that the other calls are, the broken calls, are to bring mamshech, to draw down that simple cry from the depth of the neshama, that it permeate the conscious levels of the neshama. So we're bringing it down, internalizing that kriya pshuta. If what you're saying is that therefore it would mean that that simple cry permeates even the tzayka, that cry which is expresses levels and achievement and growth, that it be permeated with that simple call, which means that all of these levels per se, they're all only valuable because that's what you want. That's a different kind of level. Basis. Let's go further. So the Indian is, as explains, that this is all based on the maamar of the figure of Tafshin Tes. A hefresh bein Indian akriya b'shem ha'odom, the difference between calling someone by name, the Indian ashvochim v'hilulim, in contrast to praising the person, al yedei atoyerim, through various descriptions, like calling him chacham, wise, chazdan, benevolent. So calling someone wise or benevolent has an effect on the person and draws out those very properties. Even though it's a tremendous effect by calling someone by these terms, you stir those very qualities that the person has. By calling him that, you stir it and you bring it out in a revealed way. When you call them by their name, there's nothing again. So the name is like the shaiva, the tzayka, the supplication, the cry. It is descriptive. But when you call by a name, person by the name, calling him by their name is not eliciting any kind of property, any kind of virtue, any kind of aspect of the person's persona. That's true. But on the other hand, that's the point. Calling them by their name, just simply by their name, which has no description, it summons their essence. When you call the person by these descriptive properties, so what are you touching? You're touching those parallel faculties of the person, and you're coaxing them to be revealed. So by calling them by these names, you bring them out from the concealed state and in the revealed state. Right? This is a tremendous message in chinuch. You call your kid a chassid and a good kid and so on. You bring out those, you store those properties, kindness, whatever the properties are. But then, al yedei kiryas Hashem, but you call someone by his name, so we're not addressing any property or virtue. But nonetheless, magiyim b'chinas etzem hanefesh, you touch the essence. Shalamayle b'chinas hakoiches, which is deeper than the faculties of intellect and emotion and desire, and so on. Gam kifi she'im behelam b'nefesh. It's even higher than the faculties as they are rooted within in a concealed state in the nefesh. High even in that, the name touches the very essence. V'hainu, sh'Hashem magiya be'etzem hanefesh. Calling the person by his name stirs the essence on such a level, so deeply, it utterly transcends any particular talent, faculty, intellectual, emotional of the person, even as these faculties are in a concealed, latent way deep within the person. What level are we touching? We learned about this at length, friends, in the Shu's Maimer. So, what are we touching? Not the helem, something's there but concealed and is stirred, but you're touching the level where it's all pure possible. Yecheles, possibility. This that he could be, whatever that yecheles, potential, is one with the essence. And that's what's touched. That's when calling the person by their name or any term that they respond to as their name. That's why when you call somebody their name, when you're called by your name and you turn, that instant that you turn, what are you turning with? You're turning with your entire being. That moment, and then the next second you'll engage what that moment is and invest yourself accordingly. But that moment when your name is called and you turn, it's raw and touches the undefined essence of who you are. You do like the well-known story. You know the story that Rabbi had. His grandchild was on his lap. He asked him, "Where's Zayda?" And he touched his here. He said, "No, that's Zayda's beard. Here, that's Zayda's nose." And then maybe continued. But Tzemach Tzedek then jumped off his Zayda's lap and then turned to him, Zayda. And the Rebbe turned to him, Amrat Tzemach Tzedek, Dosid Zayda. That moment, that was you in your entirety. So that's the paradox, because dafka, because the name does not address a specific dimension of our persona. So what does it encapsulate? Our entire being. And that's what this kriya is. It's not a call that is as a result of experience, of avodah, of achievement, of knowledge, of emotion, and therefore touching those parallel levels within God, kind, benevolent, all the descriptions, wise. It's beyond God's descriptions. It's the Eibishter himself. And therefore it's an unadorned cry. Ato, you, no name. No name is a descriptive name. No name is in the names of Hashem that are descriptions. That's like Chazden, Chacham. You. Nimshech B'chinas Merchav Atzmi Atmos Ein Sof. So this draws on the very essence of Hashem, the Merchav, the ultimate broadness. Kashem Shadidei Kiryas Hashem. Just like when you call someone by their name, Nifne L'Hakoydi B'Shmoi B'Chal Atzmosai. One turns to the one who calls him with one's entire being. So again, so calling by their name, you haven't engaged them in any descriptive way. You're just calling them by their name. Teacher, if you say teacher, so the teacher is engaging you as a teacher. That's what that means. Here, when you're saying the name, Zayda, whatever the name of the person, it cuts through all of the all or any particular property of the person. And the simple call by the name, and a yid, dafke because min hameitzer, the emes hameitzer, recognizing that anything other than the Eibishter himself is objectively a meitzer. It's like the Alter Rebbe, I want not your lower Gan Eden, your high Gan Eden, but you alone. That's what this is. Manish as dich allein. That's what this Kriya is. The Rebbe is saying that every one of us, at that moment before Tkiyah Shofar. Let's continue a couple of lines to go to Slichas. It's actually a Moedic thing coming now. This is 1966, friends. This Farbrengen began, I don't, Rabbi Minkitz would remember, would know, it was there. There was three, it could be Sasonkim was one of them. Even maybe Rab Mendel. 3 Jews had just come out of Russia. The whole Farbrengen started, Min Hameitzar. He was talking about Russian Jewry, and the whole theme of the Maimer that he's an Oni, and Oni has a time there. Why did you make me an Oni? That was the whole Farbrengen. That could have been the Rosh Chaim, the Rosh Hashanah, when the Rebbe asked them to be those who came out of Russia. There was a handful to be on the bimah with him when he blew shofar. There was many dike b'chiyas. Sasonkin, Yoska Sasonkin. The Rebbe asked specifically that he should be with him.
I'm not sure if he came out then. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Sasonkin came out in the Laments. I think.
Came out when?
Later. I think so.
After 66. Okay, we're going to get the story straight.
I think so. I'm not sure.
Okay. Definitely, there's mentioned, I think, 3 Chassidim that have come out. Okay, so a couple of lines, friends. Or maybe not. Okay, we'll stop here. Go to Slichas. And I'll continue the last ois tomorrow. Okay, 2 lines. That's also the Gemara says the whole Shana she Rasha b'tchilasa misasheres b'soifa. In a year that is poor, the beginning is wealthy at the end. That's min hameitzer to the merchav shayidei she sol oisin atzman Rosh. Rashi says that you didn't make themselves poor, kamei rosh v'onish elim like a poor, an impoverished person that has nothing. V'batachles hameitzer. God lotzak kosev etanosa. And he has a great cry and a big time madua gila chelkelis on why must he be the only? And then on the Elebedas, the Gemara says, what exubis, the context there is about a father and the dowry that he would give to his daughter. Without going to the pratim, but the bottom line, the Gemara there says, talking about a wealthy father or a poor father, the Gemara explains we don't mean financially in this context, because it's clear that's not the issue, but his attitude. And Rashi says he can have a lot, but he's miserly, so he's an oni. And a person can have less, but he's broad, and then giving, then he's an osher. So ain't only elebedas. Ultimately, aniyas is attitude. So he means he baruchni is that the yidden tainas, he's an oni. She'ein le hasoga belikus, he has no grasp in godliness. Af she'ein le yoshem b'zeh, he's not responsible, it's not his fault. Vein ze misad in yonim atluyim boin, it's not because of matters that are dependent on him. He's talking about Russia, the Yidden in Russia. Okay, we'll stop here. He's talking about Chalal, that's in Golus, and especially in Russia. Okay, let's start Russia. Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we'll learn. And we should hear Psudas Taivas all around.